Welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at very advanced functions in Python because we've had a look at the basics and then we've had a look at some advanced stuff, and now I want to do some even more advanced stuff with you. So there are three things we're going to look at. The first one is args and quarks, the second one is lambdas, and the third one is functions as arguments. And I'm going to show you all three of these things using a Python notebook. So if we start with args and quarks, you might remember that this star function will spill a list. And also, you may know that 2 stars will spill a dictionary. So here we have a function where we take in some args and print them out, and we take in some quarks and print them out. Then we loop through each argument in the args, and for each kwarg in the kwargs.keys, and we print them out. So what args are is, if you spill a list or have some values that are separated by commas in the function, then it collects them all into a list. And for kwargs, if you have key value pairs, it then collects them all and forms a dictionary. So first we'll define the function, and then we'll run it with just args. So as you can see, it's turned these args that we've put in here into a tuple, and it's printed them out. So it's just printed args, and then it hasn't printed out the kwargs because there aren't any, and then we can loop through them and print out each one. In this function we've got just kwargs, so each one is assigned with a key is equal to a value, and then it's stored here as a dictionary, and then the dictionary is printed out. And you don't have to call them args or kwargs, but you do need the star for args and the 2 star for kwargs. And so here it's printed out each one's key and then the value. So this is another function, and this one will take in an argument and then a default argument and then some args and then some kwargs, and it will print out each one. So if we run that, and so if we call it with just an argument, then we see the argument's something, the default argument is nothing, and then we haven't got any args or kwargs. But now we're going to call it with something else as well, and so now the default argument has been overwritten, and of course we've still got no args or kwargs because they come last. Now we've got another function, and this time it's got an extra argument, so 1, 2, and then this will start forming part of the args, and then it's got a key and a value for kwargs. And then we've just got one set of kwargs that we've put on the end. And if you're confused about why I'm calling them args and quarks, the reason is that args stands for arguments and kwargs stands for keyword arguments, but it's a lot easier to abbreviate them. So if we run this, you can kind of expect the argument will be something, the default argument will be something else. The args will just be part of this tuple on its own in a single tuple, and the kwargs will be a dictionary with the key and the value. And that's what we expected. Next we're moving on to lambdas. And so the way it works with lambdas is that you use the word lambda, then you have the arguments, and then this goes to a return value. So this is a very simple case where the function has no arguments, and instead of using the def keyword, we've used lambda notation, and it will just return 1 every time. Function 2 takes in an argument, and then it just returns 2 times the argument. And then function 3 takes in some args, because you can do that with lambda functions, and returns the length of the args. You can also have commas, so that you could have, for example, lambda x and y might go to x times y, in which case you're just multiplying them. So if we define these functions and run function 1, we expect 1, because that's what we're returning. Function 2, we've doubled 2 to get 4, and then function 3, we're expecting 3, because here we get a tuple that makes up our args, and of course we've called it sequence, doesn't have to be called args, but we've got the star, and then we just print out the length. So in essence, this function just tells us the number of arguments we've put in, and we expect 3. Next, we'll have a look at functions as arguments. So the idea is that if you've got a function, you can just pass it in as an argument, and it won't call it until you put the brackets around the end. So you'll notice in every example we've had to put brackets to call our function. So what we'll do here is we'll create a call function that takes in a function and some args and then calls the function with the args. So the first function I've got is sum, and this is a built-in function that will return the sum of a list or the sum of two items. So if we call it, what we'll get is sum will be our function, so it will call sum, and in these brackets it will put a tuple that contains the numbers 2 and 5, and so of course the sum is 7. Here we've got another function that will tell you the very last index of the list. So what it has is it's a lambda again, because you can pass lambda functions in as arguments. And the reason you might do this is so that you don't have to give it a name, because in this example this function has no name, whereas here we call it function 1 and function 2 and function 3. And so this will return up to the comma, so the length of the number of args minus 1, and it's taking in 2 and 5. So these don't have to be anything, but because there are 2 of them, we can expect the result to be 1. And that's what we expected. So these are some high level, quite advanced topics. Hopefully you've got your head around them. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, learned some cool stuff, and I'll see you again, same time next week. Till then.